like a mine. 6 feet of water in the streets of Evangeline, Louisiana, Louisiana. They're trying to wash us away. They're trying to wash us away. Louisiana, Louisiana. They're trying to wash us away. They're trying to wash us away.
Good evening and welcome to Good Rockin' Tonight. We're back again after the holidays. And tonight I have with me an old friend, not that old, but old. This is Lenny Capello. Lenny is a Hall of Famer, one of the first that we inducted. Lenny is a Baton Rouge guy, but he was born in New Orleans.
I was.
And his first hit that actually got him in the Hall of Fame, sort of, was done at Cosmo Studio in New Orleans.
Exactly.
And of all things, it was called Cotton Candy.
Correct.
And I'm not going to mention the world famous album is on. We're going to save that for not on the air one day.
Okay. We're not on the air, are we?
Yes, we are. See it right there?
Oh no, I can't see the air. Anyway, yeah, I see.
That's us on. Yeah, that's us in the air.
That's which one is you and which one is me?
This one's me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't see me.
Oh, you're here.
Oh, I'm there.
Folks,
Well, then who is it here?
just to prove our point,
Who?
Lenny Capello is a Louisiana Music Hall of
That
Famer.
doesn't look like me at all.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
But it did about
Watch it now.
60 years ago. Yeah.
You think so? Yeah. Well, yeah, 60. It would be 60. That's right.
Yeah. About 60, and that
Makes me old.
is the record of Cotton Candy, right here
Yes.
on Rick Records.
Rick Records, and
You were the first or the first recorded on Rick?
I was probably neither. I was the first artist on his label, but I don't think he had the master at that time, because it originally started off to be on Ace Records, which was the record that Jimmy Clanton and Dick Holler,
Johnny Vincenzo.
yeah, and it never came out. So, knowing what I knew about the record business, which was absolutely nothing, I didn't know anything about music either. So, the music business and
We can go back to an old point.
okay,
Okay, in the 50s, when you signed, and we're going to work with Cosmo, Matassa, who kept his heritage name, Matassa, you knew that he had already taken a friend who went with you, named Frankie Guzzo, given him a deal, and changed his last name from Frankie Guzzo to Frankie Ford.
Frankie Ford. Right.
And how did you figure you would come out with Lenny Capello?
Well, I didn't even really think about names in those days. You know, I didn't go down there, you know, to make a name of myself. I was making a record, and of course I knew nothing about. Very naive, not knowing anything about the business. I just knew that the record didn't come out because Frankie and I split the session. In other words, in those days, there was no such thing as an album. You made a record, and the record had two sides.
Sometimes.
Well, sometimes you would share it. I've seen a few of those where there'd be one artist on one side and another on the other, and so we did the split session, and we were both. It was both our first recording, and his record came out, and mine never came out. Of course, I didn't. 14 years old. I'm not going to call him and ask him, "Where's my record? You know, where's my daddy's record?"
Now, tell me what you told me before. What were you afraid Cosmo was going to do about
Well,
Capello.
it was Joe Ravina, actually.
Okay.
You see, Cosmo at the studio.
Another good Italian boy.
But yeah, and then Johnny Vincent owned Ace Records, and so I didn't know how any of that played out. wasn't really interested in it. Didn't, you know? So you want the whole story? Because I mean, we'll take up the whole hour.
We'll cut it down a little bit.
You want me to cut it down?
You weren't worried about becoming Ford. You were worried about becoming something else.
You've gotten ahead of the story, Mike.
Yeah.
Already you've gotten way ahead of the story. So I did not go down there as Lenny Capello. There was no such person as Lenny Capello. It was Leonard. That's my name. All my family, all my friends, my teachers, and everything called me Leonard. So the name of the band I was in was called the Dots, and so we played a lot all around. We were in the same time as John Fred and the Playboys and the Dots, and then after that there was a whole bunch. But I'm not sure which of our bands was first, but I did not start the band, the Dots. It was already started by a guy named Camille Castasu. And when he went to college, they were gonna break the band up. But one of my good friends, who's been a lifetime friend, T-Boy LaSalle, was our paper boy. And he would hear me playing in the back room.
And this is 1957. Okay.
And of course, I was too shy to play. I didn't want anybody to know I was playing guitar because I was a baseball player, and that's, I didn't know how that would go. I'd get kind of ribbed about trying to sing, But anyway, so he talked me into going and trying out with the band, and of course, half of them didn't even come to the rehearsal because they didn't think they could have a band without Cass. So anyway, I got in the Dots, and long story short, we started playing, and of course the whole tenor of the band changed because I didn't sing like Cass. Cass was a smoother singer, and he did a lot of rockabilly, and I couldn't play the guitar worth. I couldn't play I didn't know the chords that he would play to play lead, so we had basically a horn band, and the saxophones took off. I wouldn't take a solo because I didn't know how to do it. As a matter of fact, I didn't know how to sing and play the guitar on a lot of the songs. So I did one of them.
And you taught the guitar for how many years?
Well, let's not talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Well, first of all, it's the beginning of rock and roll. Okay, beginning. There was nothing to base it on, nothing to compare. We were terrible, and I've got tapes to prove it because I'm one of the only people of my age to have a tape recorder. But it was reel to reel. There was no way for a person to record themselves. The first time I heard myself on recording was that WLCS studio, and I swear that wasn't me, that they put somebody. I didn't know what my voice sounded like, and so I sort of understood the process that you start off on tape. So I saved up and bought me a Ampex tape recorder from Ogden Records, which was on 3rd Street. And they let me pay it on time because I used to go in there, and buy records, and they knew me. So I was 14 years old. I would go in and pay them every week. So I have on the anthology that we'll talk about later, I guess, I have the most god-awful recordings on there that you could possibly hear, but they were true recordings, all except for the one that you spliced together, which was you couldn't have done that back then.
And made a recording.
And made a recording out of it. But I never got through it.
3 pieces of a recording.
I never actually we never got through it. I was teaching them how to play it, and we'd go back, and I don't think we ever got through it, but anyway. But in those days, that's the way it was. But the thing about, let's go back to the thing about my name.
Okay.
So we used to play in Jackson, Mississippi a lot. And so we were on...
Well, you're reading Cliff Notes now.
No, I'm just
Okay.
telling you a story. But anyway, and I didn't know that Ace Records was based in Jackson, Mississippi, because all the recording was in New Orleans. I didn't know anything, you know. I thought the guy Johnny Vincent was from New Orleans. So we get a call. We were on this it was like every town just about had a Dick Clark's type thing, you know, for teenagers. And I think it was called Teen Tempo or something like that. So I get this call, you know, somebody wanted Leonard Capella, you know, and who in the heck, we're in Mississippi, who would know me up here, you know? And so I get on the line, it was Johnny Vincent, and he tells me the story that he and Joe Rufina had parted company, and that he owned the masters and he would not put them out until I was signed with him. And he told me how to get out of the contract and all of this stuff. And here, you know,
Just what you wanted to hear.
we're talking Baton Rouge. I don't know, there weren't any lawyers that I knew in this time. In this time, you didn't sue anybody, you know, especially my family, you know.
Good thinking.
So, you want me to go on?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I called Joe Rufina. I think I've only called him maybe twice, you know, and he's the one that got me in and told me everything, you know. I followed his advice. I told him what had happened, and he told me some words that I'd never heard in Baton Rouge. That those words had never come to Baton Rouge at that time, you know, about what he was going to do with Johnny Vincent and blah, blah. And he called me kid, because I really was 14 or 15 years old at this time. And he said, you don't worry about it, I'll take care of that blippity, 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 you know. So, okay, so a couple of weeks later, he calls me, and he tells me, he says, well, I got it all figured out. He said, it's all square, you don't have to worry, I'm getting you master, and you're gonna be my first artist on my new record label, Rick Records. Okay, and he said, and also he says, we're gonna probably change your name around a little bit. Well, I'm so out of it, I didn't have even the thought of saying, well, what are you gonna change it to, you know, because I figured it wouldn't have mattered anyway. So I was figuring he was gonna change my last name because of Frankie and the Rolling Stone. I forget his. What was Rolling Stones?
Can't remember right now.
It was a French name, and so
Yeah.
they were especially.
Kansas wouldn't have made it.
No, Cassius it would. Well, I don't know. That looked kind of like that. But anyway, so I'm expecting him to change my last name. Well, now that would have been great. I wish he would have changed my last name, but anyway, we'll go on. I won't tell you why. But anyhow, so I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. I'd go down to Bert's record shop, and I'd ask him, because I bought a lot of records there, and they knew me. I said, is there any? I didn't tell him I had a record coming out, you know, because I didn't know if I did or not. Frankie Ford's record had already come out, you know, before that, and so I didn't know if mine would ever come out. So finally, I'd go down there every week, and I said, do you have any recordings on the Rick label? And first, they told me, well, I've never heard of the Rick Records, you know.
What is that?
Anyway, so finally, after several times, they said, hey, we got something on Rick Records, and I'm expecting it to be me. And it wasn't. It was Al Johnson, and the record was Lena. And I said, what's this? You know, I'm supposed to be the first person on Rick Records, but as I started thinking about it later, he never said I'd be the first recording on his label. He said I'm the first artist, okay? Well, because he'd already had me before, you know, on Ace. And so that was it. So I don't know how many months later, I came home from school, and my mother met me with a box of 25 45s, and I look on the label, and it said Lenny Capella and the Dots. And that's when Lenny Capella was contrived. Nobody knew me as Lenny. None of my friends, my parents, and my baseball
was okay
buddies,
with you.
You know, I was not Lenny. So why he did that, I don't know. And I I thought of, well, Frankie Ford, let's see, Leonard Lincoln. I knew they would, I just always assumed they would change my last name. But, and so that's how Lenny Capella was born, so to speak. Okay, do you have another question?
Let's see, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, actually, I do. And
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
You did quite a number of tracks with Cosmo.
Yeah.
And some of them got out, some of them were released,
Right.
and a lot of them weren't.
That's right. And the ones that weren't messed up weren't released, except let's see. Finally, I was with the label. Let's see, 50. It's hard to say. 3 years, I think, and only 3 records were actually released. But there were more that were done, and of course there were a lot of demos I would go up there with, and they wouldn't do anything with them, and I was hearing things that were not the typical New Orleans style, because I was just hearing things from other places and everything, and New Orleans at that time, they had sort of a style, and because it was mostly all the same people doing the studio work, so and so I didn't, I wasn't thinking that much in those days. My things started having, I think, too many chords and too many things, not funky enough or not.
Too complicated for
a little
lot
bit
of
too
people.
complicated, right? And I couldn't produce them because I didn't know how to do that either. But
as we now know, they were actually better compositions
than
most of the stuff that was getting put out.
Exactly, but anyway, the record business was never my cup of tea, because it was just about what was selling, and whenever something, that's always been that way in a lot of businesses. Whenever it would go that way, they wanted you to do something like this, and I wasn't that way. I just do what I did, and that was it. And you liked it. If not, I'd just get disappointed, come back home, wasted time, But that was the way I looked at that business at that time.
Well, actually, after doing the CD for you and everything, it strikes me as that the stuff that Cosmo didn't release was actually the birth of Swamp Bop.
Well, I don't know.
If you look at it that way.
It's hard to say where anything comes from, and definitely the beginning, like my first recording, and that became #1 on KEVL in White Castle, was definitely Swamp Pop, okay? But of course, you know the story. You're laughing, but the story was that we had an absolutely hysterical and pitiful start in the music business as far as recording, because we didn't know how to do it, where to go, and it was just a comedy of errors, and so the song got to be #1 in KVL, but we only had six records, because we didn't understand that you had to press records.
Yeah.
We just made them one at a time.
Limited pressing.
Limited presses, so it became a problem for KVL, because people were calling and wanting to know where they could buy it, and I wasn't going to sell mine.
Y'all looking at you and go, where'd you put yours?
Exactly. So so we figured that we something was wrong, and so
you made the top of the chart, but not the top of the sales.
Right. We didn't understand about selling records, because we kind of forgot about that, right? So, but anyway, so as you can tell, I'm proud to say that we did that, and it wouldn't have been any better if we'd have tried something different, maybe. Then
I have the old liner notes that I wrote for the CD that I'm using to refresh with a little bit. Because that was, 2010 when we did this?
I don't remember.
7-8 years ago.
Yeah, at least about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I was about to tell you how old I was then and how old I am now, but I'm not going to do that.
No. Protect the innocent.
Yeah.
And that's one I had up already. Why did I put that up
But you
there?
got all those notes there.
I don't know. This is just what we printed out for the liner notes
Okay.
way back when. And I said, I hadn't read this.
You mean in case either you or I have nothing to say, that would be an incredible moment.
Yeah, we can sit here and say, yes, both the business and style of music, and go down the line there. Well, we got a lot more to go on just the CD.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. We've gone through the basic stuff that Lenny did. And some
Leonard.
It says Lenny here.
Oh, yeah,
but
well, okay.
We'll go with
I
Leonard.
guess it was Lenny at that time,
But really, there were some outstanding songs like 90 Pound Weakling.
Yeah.
John Eric was on the show several weeks ago. John Eric sang 90 Pound Weakling.
90 Pound
With the
Weakling was
popsicle.
covered by another group, and that it was a flop 3 times, you see. Well, the first time, it really was never played on the radio anywhere. It was towards the end of Rick Records,
Yeah.
and they were going, they were losing. They were going broke, basically. So they couldn't. How should you put it? They couldn't coax the DJs to play the records. You know how they used to coax DJs to do things back in those days. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it really wasn't played. And also it came out, I think, in the wintertime, and it's definitely a summertime song. But that
yeah.
of course, there have been a lot of hits that did that, I know.
It's
But
definitely a summer song.
but anyway.
Well, let's switch down the list to.
By the way, I used to work out with weights. That's where that one came from.
The
And I
Charles
used to-
Atlas story.
Yeah, and I
back-
was the 90 Pound Weekly.
The back of the comic books. He used to read comic books too.
Right. But it's a spoof on the Charles Atlas thing, where the weakling, kick sand in his face, that type of thing. Okay.
But he never said yada yada yada.
No,
you're gonna
that
build
was
my
my
body.
creation, and then it wasn't Seinfeld. That was the
And
creation.
not hooty
because-
hooty hooty. I'm
Hooty,
gonna learn
hooty,
judo.
right.
Yeah.
I have a lot of nonsense type
I'll tell you
things.
what. We're going to go to break in just a couple of seconds. When we come back, we're going to go to one of the bigger songs that you were involved in. But let's listen to these messages from right now.
Oh, we were live.
I crumble mountains at my side, swept beneath the naked sky, all to answer questions why I crash through waves of torment and need.
Your dad gave me his baby to go pick up your brother from the airport.
Oh, honey, just take Mom's car. She just had navigation installed.
I totally got this. We were just there.
Hey, isn't that?
Yep. I programmed the airport in, just in case.
You don't need a new car to have new technology. Mike's Audio, conveniently located on Airline Highway near the corner of Bluebonnet.
Frosty the snowman. This is my Christmas wish for you. The precious blessing of each other. May every man be your brother. This is my Christmas wish for you.
Hi folks, Clarence Buggs here. Coach Roger Cador would take the time to tell you how to catch our brand new show, The Roger Cador Show, but as you can see, he's kind of busy right now out at Scoreboards, Baton Rouge's newest sports grill with food that is absolutely amazing. Catch the show 8 o'clock Tuesday nights, 6:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, and on Pelican Television's YouTube channel as well. You want to come out and have a great time. It's awesome, isn't it, Coach? Mm-hmm. Told you.
No one can stop me when I taste the feeling. Nothing could ever bring me down. taste the feeling.
And we're back. And I want to tell you, on the commercial for the double CD, the very best of Louisiana Christmas, Christmas is over. We still have the disc, so the information still applies and it's still a great thing. Last year, this year, next year, use it whenever year you want. I was going to ask Lenny about a song that wasn't by Leonard Capello or Lenny Capello or the Dots. It was technically by Dick Holler.
Right.
And
the Holidays, I think.
And the Holidays on Comet Records. And Cosmo recorded that too. And the thing became a hit.
Not by Dick Holler.
Not by Dick Holler. And Lenny became the de facto lead vocalist because he could sing the part higher than Dick could. Dick had a lower voice.
That's correct.
And so they split it, and Lenny was dominant because the high notes tend to be more dominant
I
than
was
low
always
notes.
dominant because I had a voice that would cut through because of singing live and rock and roll in those days. The PA and electronic equipment was not good, so he who is the loudest is the lead singer. In this case, I'm singing the high part, and everybody assumes the high part is the lead.
And they still did.
Right.
The people that covered it after that went with your part.
Right.
They're going, I'm singing Dick Holler. No, you're singing Lenny Capello.
And Don Smith and Sarah wrote the song. I had a little studio at my house, and we had fiberglass on the wall, and it was pink, and it looked like cotton candy, so maybe that's where the cotton candy came from. But Dick, I remember the words that Don wrote, and they were working it out, and Sarah came in and tweaked a couple of words and just made it 100% better, you know?
Well, as we both know, Dick went on to write Snoopy and the Red Baron.
That's right.
And then he wrote a total out of left field song. Beautiful, beautiful song. Unlike Dick or anybody else around.
Well, everybody writes all kinds of things, and they just want one thing from you.
It was a very special song called Abraham.
It will be.
Abraham, Martin, and John.
Right.
And Dion put it out.
Dion put it out, and it's been recorded by last count over 50 or 60 artists.
A ton of people.
I mean, big artists.
And it's a great song.
Harry Belafonte, and it's about, of course, Abraham Lincoln, John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Bobby Kennedy. And that it'll always have a
message.
A message, and it's a song.
It's been called the anthem song.
It is
of the '60s.
It is, and I don't know if you remember, there was a time when there were so many assassinations going on that that's the time we don't, we think things are bad now, but they were pretty bad in that time where people were actually getting assassinated in this country. So.
Dick can, on occasion, be a deep thinker.
Oh yeah, well he is a deep thinker. He's actually writing a book right now. I hope he gets through with it, but about the way in the South, the bands were back then when we were coming up, and of course we were segregated, even though we honored each other and were wanting to play together.
It's like on one upcoming show, Deacon John's gonna be sitting where you are.
Yeah. Okay.
And we both know. Deacon is the man who combined the Black Musicians Union and the White Musicians Union.
Right.
Part of that was responsible for Louis Armstrong leaving New Orleans. He had to stand on the side of the stage if a white band was playing, even though he was singing and playing.
Yep.
He couldn't sit on the same stage. It was union rules.
It was.
Deke finally had the good sense to combine those unions?
And well, it was the times, and of course that's a real deep subject, but we were playing styles of music that really had, well, all of the artists that I like were black. The very few white artists that I emulate or copy.
Well, and that sort of goes back to, as I understand, one of the reasons that Cosmo brought you, Frankie Guzzo, Frankie Ford,
Right.
and Jimmy Clanton to New Orleans was Dave Bartholomew wanted Cosmo to find some white teenagers because his songs are going out, Fats Domino, Little Richard, and all of a sudden Pat Boone's covering them and selling 10 times the records that they were because he was white.
Right. And but anyway, so all of that, Dick is a good person because to be there to address that, you know, and I hope he can finish it. And like I'm going to do some research for him to find out. You see, back in those days, we couldn't go see. Well, we could go see a star, but there were a lot of local bands that we couldn't intermingle with. And I remember one time we were playing. I don't know where, but it was. We found ourselves at 3 o'clock in the morning on a ferry between St. Francisville and New Roads. It was a ferry, and we were on the ferry, and there was another band. I don't know who they were. They were a black band, and it was just us. So we brought our instruments out and started playing, and that was a great moment. You know, we're just playing. You know, off the river. You can imagine what that sounded. And all I can remember is this black guy saying, "Man, the Dots is cool. The Dots is cool." You know, and I don't even remember their names. You know, I wish I could have had it was just a moment, you know. And so we played all the way across Mississippi River, and that's the only time back in the early days that I can ever remember playing with black musicians.
Well,
and we played to no one. We played to the river, the guys that ran the ferry or whatever. You know? And I often wonder who was that band? What was their name? I didn't even think to ask.
As the anthology goes on, after you recorded with Dick, you did more of your what I call roots of swamp pop songs that are on here, and then you and Randy Russell Savello.
Yeah.
And Rocky Saxon started a number of groups that were picked up for release by Shelby Singleton, who is and that was at
famous Bill Trish's studio, and it was with Bob Robbins who talked me back. In 1962, I decided, I was about to say bah humbug, but that's the name of my band from 64 to, we're together about 39 years. But it wasn't Lenny Capella and Bah Humbug, it wasn't Rocky Saxon and Bah Humbug, it was Bah Humbug. And
none of y'all wanted to be who you were.
Yeah, well, that always happens, but anyway, I'm out of it, because you know, Rick Records is out of business, and in those days, there was no such thing as an oldie. When the record was through, and it was pulled from on the radio.
You weren't old enough for it to be
on the
oldie.
radio, and they took it off the jukeboxes. You didn't hear it again unless you had the record, you know, and you played it yourself. So anyway, so I said,
and you couldn't find any more to buy.
All right, Lenny Capella is gone because the record company's gone, and da 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 da. Okay, well, I didn't account for the internet, and all of a sudden one day my son calls me, my second son. He said, "Daddy, your songs are all da 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 da." Look, and he was all excited. I said, "What is the internet?"
The inner what?
The internet, and basically, you know, it's like I couldn't get rid of. I mean, and it's hard for people to understand, but I did not. You know, every time my name was mentioned, it was always associated with the one regional hit that I had, Cotton Candy, Lenny Capella, Cotton Candy. You know, and I couldn't play Cotton Candy because it's got a lot of drum parts in it.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do it by myself. and most of the drummers at that time couldn't play it.
Didn't
So
play.
if
Didn't play
sat in
high
with
school
a band,
band
you know,
drums.
they thought they knew it.
Yeah.
You know, we go da 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 da, but they didn't account for all the stops where the drum would go pa 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 da 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 da, you know, and so there'd just be this big silence there.
And we'll tell the rest of the story. Your guy was a high school drummer.
That's right. Well, he was the state champion rudimental drummer, so he made up all of those cadiddles and fiddles, and the only guy that could play it was the studio guys. You know, they could play anything, but the average drummer around here could keep a beat, but he couldn't. You know, couldn't
It's
play.
funny you say Bill Trish because John Eric said the same thing.
Right.
And we both went to Bill's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Bill passed
Yeah,
a few months
it's been
ago.
about 2 months ago. And you know, there was a lot of little on Bill. There was a time when there wasn't a Cosmo studio in New Orleans or anything going, and Dave Bartholomew, a lot of the big acts came to Baton Rouge for a while and recorded at
And
Bill's
it was
studio.
a good thing to have a studio here.
Right. Right.
Just for the reason that you went down there and recorded great stuff, and Cos didn't like it because it wasn't his New Orleans style.
That's right. And there was no studio in Baton Rouge at that time.
No.
And of course, there's a hilarious story as to how we got to New Orleans, but that'll take the whole program, you know. We got basically a wild goose chase, but it had to do with Johnny Ramostella, okay, who is Johnny Ramostella and I went to school at the same school, but we didn't go to school together because I never saw him there. And
I don't think Johnny was there
Let's
very
put it
often.
this way. I did hear him come in on his motorcycle with his black jacket and stuff like that, but we never had any classes together, and we didn't know each other because Johnny basically hung around with guys that were in their 20s. You know, his old band, well, a bunch of old men to us. You know, one of them was even 30 years old, you know.
Oh, God.
That's right. But I mean, he was a different person, and so I never personally knew him, even though we were same age and everything. But he had a record because he was really ambitious, and it had the address of a place in Mississippi. So we thought we'd go there to find a record label because that was after we didn't have the records to sell, you know. And we figured we got to get with the label that.
And honestly, in that day and age, there was no record company in Baton Rouge.
No, there wasn't. No, and there wasn't any studios. We recorded at WLCS and also a guy named John White. Does that name ring a bell?
I know John.
Okay, John White recorded people in his office. And the first record that we have, this is good. We got it cut at the radio station, and the thing went from the inside to the outside. And when we got this thing back, we wanted one that was 7.5 inches with a big hole in the center that played from the outside to the inside. This went the opposite way. So the first,
And a lot of them did.
and I didn't sing any of the songs on
A lot
that.
of the modern lathes, we even cut in to out.
The first record we made, the lead of the band was a guy named Claude Prejean. And Claude sang the 2 songs on that, and then we did an instrumental. I didn't sing on that because, you know, the first recording sessions of the Dots. But anyway, we knew we didn't want a record to go from the inside to the out, okay?
That's like when I was in Cajun Pawn Stars. The first thing I brought to them was Jerry Lee's first recording, which he recorded at Cosmos for $2. His wingman said, "Come on, cuz, you don't want to cut a record. I'll pay." Okay, and they cut it, and they were asking me at the pawn shop, said, "Now, is this in or out?" I said, "The label says in, out to in." We put it on an old turn player, old school player this big, and played it on the TV show. It was. But they did cut them both ways.
Well, you see, and this is why the main thing when we went to WLCS that we wanted is, we all said we wanted it to be we didn't even know what to call it, like a 45 or whatever. We wanted the big hole in the middle and record about this size, and we wanted to go from the outside in. And so we each got a record, and that's the one that went #1. We must have got an extra one. My uncle from White Castle, K-ville, was in White Castle, and a guy named Lou Millette, who is a legend in this town from the old days, was a station manager there. So my uncle knew him, and he played it. Well, that's how that got going, and then that was our first big mistake, where we didn't have any records to sell.
Well, let's go back to some of the stuff you and Randy
and Rocky
did.
Rocky and I
did y'all write collectively?
Not so much Randy. Rocky and I had, because we were playing in Bah Humbug Band then, and so we had a partnership agreement, and we'd collaborate on everything.
Okay.
Some things he would write 75%, I might write 25%, or we'd get together, and then the opposite would happen. I'd write, he'd write 75%. Some things he wrote 90%, and I'd just look over and change a word here or there.
This is a great discrepancy in the tunes that y'all wrote.
And of course, Bob Robbins at that time was putting out all kind of records. Any name he could think of, we'd have records.
Yeah, and several of these charted, like 106 and 109 and.
The best one, I think,
Under.
was the Typical Cali, got the 114, I think, on the charts, and Suki Mama, which is the one that Bill liked, was really cotton candy with new words to it, and Roy Abear, didn't do the cotton candy things, but he did a little thing on it, and it was so those couple, and then of course is the Brother Paul story, which we need to save that for another program. How much time do we have left?
Oh, we got 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Talk about Brother Paul?
If you want to.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was working at Werline's music store, which I worked for 15 years. I taught there, and you were trying to. I taught guitar for 50 years, by the way. And you were asking me, how does a guy that didn't know how to play the guitar teach?
You learned.
Simple. You learned, and there weren't any other teachers, and that always helps. And there wasn't anybody who knew how to teach people rock and roll things. There was a couple teachers that taught a lot of people, but they taught them
three chords and four chords.
Yeah, basically, I did too when I first started. I used the book, the Mel Bay book, until finally I figured out nobody plays a guitar that sounds like this. And basically, it was a converted piano method. You go boom, chick, boom, and nobody played that way, and so everybody wanted to,
it wasn't rock and roll.
In the leads, and now all they do is show licks, But anyway, so let me go back. I kind of lost my train there, but I'm inclined to that at my age. I can do that. But yeah.
We'll allow you.
We were talking about at Werline's, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how did I get there? Let's see if you're paying attention.
I don't know. How did you get there?
If you're paying attention to what I was talking about, I bet you he doesn't know.
Who?
You.
No, I was listening.
What was I talking about when I got off the subject about me teaching guitar at the Werline's?
I don't know. You were off the subject.
Hey, can't you run the tape back?
No.
Hey, this is live. They can't run the tape back. Do you remember what I was saying? Does nobody remember? What are we doing this for? Nobody remembers what we're saying.
Well, all the thousands of folks at home.
Somebody will call
in New Orleans, in Lafayette,
and
here,
and tell us what we're talking about.
Or listen to it. Joe Shabe's probably watching this at home right now.
Okay. Well, anyway, I completely lost that. We'll do it on the next program. 5 years from now.
You did one. We did on the CD.
I was on the motorcycle. Oh.
Never knew.
Oh yeah, I was. Yeah. Okay.
We did one that was a little different. It was a Lee Tillman song.
Yeah.
Better World.
Better World. Right. This It's still a song, I'm still working on it, by the way.
It's a great song.
It is.
I love it.
It is a great song, but it is something I've only been working on it, let's see, since 1969. No, what was it? 69.
Yeah, that's when it was cut originally.
Anyway, but everybody that's heard it likes it, but it was never released. And it
until we put it on there.
Until we put it on there, we did a version. But there's a version. Even that is not the version I'm happy with. But anyway, that's a song.
You're talking about the different lyrics version that you did. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, the lyrics pretty well remain the same. It's the arrangement of it. You haven't heard the latest arrangement, you know.
Well, there were some lyrical changes that were applicable to the song.
Maybe a few slight ones, but basically it's the same thing, you know. It's the same thing that it was in '69.
But, you know, you were right about one thing. Lee had a sweet, sweet, great voice back in the day.
Lee has a voice that I think is one of the best voices that came out of Baton Rouge, and that he doesn't sound like anybody else, but he doesn't have a weird voice. In other words, some people don't sound like anybody else because they sound.
He has a really nice voice.
It's just a unique voice, and anyway, I've always admired the way that Lee did songs, and he didn't do enough recording. Let's just face it, he doesn't have that many records that he recorded.
18 or 20.
I don't know if he recorded that many.
Yeah, he really did.
Well, where are they? I've never heard of them. You've been holding them back on me?
Yeah, trying to figure out what to do with some of them. Sam claims he has some of them. Other people claim they have some of them.
Well, whatever.
And that's the problem with Lee.
I know he's a very modest person. He doesn't toot his own horn, which is really unique for this business, you know.
I ran into him a few weeks ago, and he was very thin. He had been very sick. I said, Lee, can you still sing? He said, oh, no, man, I can't sing.
But he always has done that,
yeah,
you know. I mean, he can sing if he wanted to.
But I tell you, let's take a break right now.
I've already taken my break.
Lenny Capella will be right back with me after this break.
I called it a day.
Frosty the snowman. This is my Christmas wish for you. The precious blessing of each other.
Taste the feeling.
Hi folks, Clarence Buggs here. Coach Roger Cador would take the time to tell you how to catch our brand new show, The Roger Cador Show, but as you can see, he's kind of busy right now out at scoreboards. Baton Rouge's newest sports grill with food that is absolutely amazing. Catch the show 8 o'clock Tuesday nights, 6:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, and on Pelican Television's YouTube channel as well. You want to come out and have a great time. It's awesome, isn't it, Coach?
Mm-hmm.
Told you.
Look, your dad gave me his baby to go pick up your brother from the airport.
Oh, honey, just take Mom's car. She just had navigation installed.
I totally got this. We were just there.
Hey, isn't that...
Yep. I programmed the airport in, just in case.
You don't need a new car to have new technology. Mike's Audio, conveniently located on Airline Highway near the corner of Bluebonnet.
I pictured a rose-covered cottage, kids, and the whole 9 yards.
We're back, it seems.
Yep. I'm back. I
You're
never
back?
left.
No, you didn't. You were right there the
I
whole
was right
time.
there. I didn't move. I didn't
Lenny,
move
tell me a little bit about Half a Crown that you wrote for Frankie Ford.
Well, Half a Crown is probably typical of a lot of things I was writing that New Orleans wasn't interested in. You know, because I was able to hear, as I say, records from other places and that had more music harmony to it or chord structures or stuff. I started being able to figure that out. Of course, I hadn't gone to music school yet. That's a whole other chapter, you know.
Yeah.
I did everything backwards.
You didn't even tell me you could play strings.
Well, that's a big story in itself. we could do a whole series on me, but I don't think anybody would be interested. Okay.
We'll do another.
Okay. But if they want to, if you want to write a book about someone who did everything ass backwards, that would be me. Okay. Okay. But what are you talking about?
You have a song called
Half
Ass Backwards.
Yeah, Half a Crown. Okay. So I wrote that. By the way, I have never recorded a cover tune. That is of everything, and it's the reason I was probably not successful. Is because I wrote everything, and with the exception of writing with Rocky, I did most of them completely on my own. Now, most of the local bands, all they did was cover things, and that's kind of the easy way out in a way because it's a familiar song and people like it. So if you record it, and there's a chance that a lot of people already like it. But anyway, I digress. I'll never tell you the Half a Crown story, but anyway, I told him a little bit of it. The first person who recorded it was Al Costanza. I was playing in his band, and he liked the song, and he recorded it.
Somewhere I have a record of that, I think.
I may have too.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes. Okay, good. And then and then Frankie Ford recorded it. My buddy Frankie Ford recorded it and did a real good job on it. But he sang it different from Al, and of course different from the way that I had written it.
Yeah.
So when I did have a track to it, an original track that I had done, we used to record at Werline's music store. Mm-hmm. That's another chapter. I did a lot when there was no recording studio here. I would record in the back of Werline's, and people would come, and I'd get in a piano room with that little mixer I showed you, the little pots that would like two. Mm-hmm. We could, anyway, that should go in the Hall of Shame. But anyway,
that's it.
But anyway, so I decided I was 65, and then this track was made when I was in my 20s. So I decided I'm going to finally record it with a melody that I originally wrote it, and I couldn't do it. So that song was never meant to be sang the way I wrote it. So
subject to interpretation.
That's right, and so we'll never know the way.
You had a couple on here that you'd written. I think it said 62 or so. They were actually Beatles before the Beatles were out. Why Deny?
The Beatles were the same age as me. Okay.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney and I exactly the same age, give or take a month. Jimi Hendrix and I, same thing.
That didn't work right.
Well, I'm just saying. So I guess we were the writing part of it. I don't know what they were doing. That was in '60.
Yeah, because some of them, I think I told you, it's like they have a better middle eight and they have more chords to them.
Right.
And melodic.
Right.
And you were writing that in the early '60s.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Before they were writing it, but it wasn't
early.
out.
So it would have to be before '62, because
Yeah.
I didn't write it after '62 very much.
So it's strange the roads you miss.
Well, you know.
By fate. By Cosmo not wanting to release some of the Swamp Pop songs.
It's all fate, and I'm absolutely satisfied and content with the way the road went.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'm actually.
And nonetheless, when we did this anthology, we ended up with 29 songs.
Right. I didn't know there were 29 songs, but there's some pretty bad things on that album.
Not that bad.
Okay. You know, but they're the truth. They're the real recordings. And like Cosmo said, all the recordings of today are performances that never happened. And that's a good way to put it. You know, back then it was truthful. It was sometimes ugly, but it was truthful.
Well, and the music runs the gamut of early New Orleans R&B to swamp pop to 60s rock and roll, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You wrote quite a bunch of interesting songs.
They are interesting, if nothing else.
And you don't teach at all anymore, huh?
Nope, I don't want to teach. I've done that. I taught for 50 years, and I know how to teach, but I've come to the conclusion that a lot of people aren't interested in really learning.
One thing that surprised me is that you have a degree from LSU, School of Music.
I don't have a degree, but I have an education.
You have an education. Because I was amazed one day when Tommy McLean handed me an unfinished tape that I was trying to fix for him. And I said, "I love strings on here." And he said, "I can do strings." I said, "Yeah?" He said, "Yeah, I can't mix them." I said, "I can mix them." Came out beautiful. Under 30. We did it under 30 too. Folks, this has been a dear friend, Lenny Capello, Louisiana Music Hall of Fame inductee, and an early one. And Lenny's history, pure history. And he's telling a countdown, so we can go, "Hey, hi guys, we'll see you next week."
Some people got away all right. Well, they have busted through, clear down the Plaquemine. 6 feet of water in the streets of Evangeline. Louisiana, Louisiana, they're trying to wash us away. They're trying to wash us away.